Okay. I'm gonna hold on one more moment. Okay, before we get started, I just want to let everyone know that tonight's shir is extremely appropriately sponsored to mark the fourth yortzeit of Dr. George Weiss, Zichron Livracha. We thank Delia Weiss and her children, Miriam and Steve Friedman and family, Alan and Shira Weiss and family, and Danny Weiss and Leora Greenberg and family. And I just want to explain why I feel so strongly that it's so appropriate for the learning tonight to be the Zecher Nishmas Dr. Weiss. First of all, his daughter, Miriam, is the one who's initiated this shir. So we always say the nicest thing to do for someone's yortzeit is for the person's own children, progeny to do special mitzvahs. So it's extremely appropriate that the shir should be dedicated in his memory. But I also want to mention something else. Dr. Weiss, from the early days of the shul, Dr. Weiss very much brought a spirit of a fusion between passion for religion and passion for rigorous intellectual discussion and analysis. And we're very fortunate that the Friedman family, Mrs. Weiss and the Friedman family certainly continues this within our community. But Baruch Hashem, this type of context where we can hopefully have a nice give and take and not just sit passively and actually people's own questions form the structure of the discussion. I think it's hopefully brings much nachas to Dr. Weiss's neshama. So thank you very much to Mrs. Weiss and the entire Weiss family. Okay, so thank you to all the people who sent in questions. I want to give a little bit of an introduction, and then really I'll focus on the questions. What we did last time is I addressed the questions that were submitted ahead of time for 45 minutes. And then at 45, we opened it up for questions, whether it be based on the things that we discussed, whether it be other questions on the topic. So I'll ask people not to comment while we're going, because kind of have to go a little bit rapid fire, but then at 8:45, we'll open it up for discussion. To give a little bit of an introduction, and then we'll really from there go on to your questions. Borer, which is commonly translated as selecting, is one of the most applicable malachos, prohibited actions of Shabbos. And basically what borer is when things are, the technical term is in a mishmash, when things are mixed in a way that it's difficult to separate them, perhaps difficult to distinguish one from the other from a distance, and you have a sense of what's more desirable and less desirable, and you want to separate in some way the more desirable from the less desirable, the less desirable from the more desirable. It's a very natural thing to do in all kinds of times in life, but that actually is a malacha, a prohibited malacha on Shabbos. So that's complicated. And so the principles of Bora are not that complicated, but the applications are complicated. Again, the basic premise being that if things are mixed and you want to unmix them and create some kind of organization between more desirable and less desirable, that is prohibited. Now, there's a very, very important exception to the prohibition of borer, which is what we're going to talk about for almost all of tonight, which is what's called derech achila. That the Gemara explains that the malacha of borer, the prohibited activity of borer, is just sort of organizing for organization's sake. But if a person is eating and in the process of eating or anything akin to that, I mean, I can't do anything without choosing, right? You're going to eat cholent. Isn't every time you stick your fork into the cholent, you're making a choice? How's it going to work? So as long as it can be compared in some way to the kind of benefit a person has when they're eating, borer is no longer prohibited. But there are 3 rules to make borer no longer prohibited. One is it has to be for immediate use. It has to be that I'm making that selection right now to use it right now. I'm not making the selection now to use an hour later. That's one. Another is I'm taking the desired thing. In other words, If I'm separating out the undesired thing, it's not really, I'm not really selecting for that moment by definition, because first I'm going to separate out and then I'll have something left to take from. So the way it works, I have to take the desired thing. And the third thing is I can't use a specialized vessel, specialized utensil to make that separation. I want to repeat the 3 rules, and then we'll see a lot of great examples that you all gave, and we'll see how it all kind of plays out. That it's for immediate use. I'm extracting what I want, and I can't use a specialized vessel for it. Okay, so that more or less is the shiur, and everyone should have a good night. And you'll see almost everything is application now. Okay, you'll see it's going to be the most popular shiur I ever gave. Okay, so now, not exactly in an order, but sort of in an order. Question number 1. What if I have a bowl of peas and carrots, but I only want the peas? Can I take them for myself? Can I just take out the peas from the carrots? Now let's just think this through. It's a good example because peas and carrots are both kind of small. So it's all kind of a mishmash a little bit, right? I only want the peas. So what's supposed to happen? So let's think about it. The questioner wants to know if they can just take the peas. Now that's pretty good, because that's for taking what they desire for what they don't desire. I want to be very clear. Borer, everything can be good and usable, and it can still be borer. Borer is I take something desired from something not desired. So if I feel like peas, I'm not interested in carrots. I might be interested in carrots in an hour from now, but I'm not interested in carrots now. That's borer. But it's okay, because I'm taking the desired from that which I don't desire. So I'm taking the peas. That's okay. The one big rule that a person has to remember in that context is that the context is I'm sitting at the table and there's a bowl of peas and carrots going around, and I fish out the peas for myself. If I'm in the kitchen and it's an hour before lunch, and I don't want to have the awkward experience of everyone staring at me as I fish out every pea from the bowl, so I want to separate the peas out an hour before lunch, that's not miyad, that's not for immediate use, and that would be problematic. Okay, I hope this is making sense. Next question, it's a very similar one, but I think the more examples kind of bring it out better. For chicken soup, can you take out the bones before serving it? What if someone only wants the chicken part and not the vegetables? Okay, so let's think this through a little bit. So I have my pot of chicken soup. I have chicken bones floating around maybe, or in the chicken. I have vegetables. So I don't want to have chicken bones in the soup. Now the easiest thing to do, practically, not halachically, but practically, the easiest thing to do would probably be pick out all the bones and separate them. But that would be problematic, because that would be zeroing in on the not desired item. Okay, so really what a person has to do is a person has to try to get what they're looking for. So if there's bones floating around the soup, try to avoid the bones, right? You try to avoid the bones, you just try to get the other stuff. And if the bones are in the chicken, then you're really out of luck. Okay, and then the person who's eating them will sort of have to eat their way around the bone, when they're eating the chicken. Now, a person requests, please no vegetables. I only want chicken. Don't give me any vegetables. So again, the way you would do that for them is you would take a bowl and you would take your ladle and you'd make it your business to only pick out the chicken and the soup, and you'd work your way around the vegetables. Now, I should mention, but that is for immediate use. In other words, the person is sitting at the table, they ask for a bowl of chicken soup without the vegetables. So at that moment, I can be fishing around and avoiding the vegetables, and not separating the vegetables, but just taking what I want and leaving the vegetables behind. But it can't be, I have a guest coming. They always come to me, Friday night, and I know they're going to ask for chicken and no vegetables. it's 15 minutes, I'm still waiting for the guests to come. You know what, I'll separate the bowl. No, you can't do that because that's not for immediate use. Now, I do want to mention one more option that's a little bit complicated, but it is good to know that it exists. Let's say I want to be a little bit more creative. So I say, okay, look, I get it. I'm not allowed to separate the bone from the rest of the soup. How about the following? How about I'm going to take my ladle, I'm going to dip my ladle into the pot of soup, and I'm going to get half a ladle's full of soup with bones in there. And I'm going to take the whole ladle out of the pot and dump it in my sink. Everybody with me? So I'll say, I didn't separate. What do you mean? I can't separate the bones from the chicken or the bones from the soup. I didn't. I took a whole mixture, it had bones in it, and I dumped it all out. So that is a valid option. That is a valid option. What's a little tricky is logically it's a little complicated because, well, guess what? If you're going to be dumping it all in the sink, you're saying that you're not interested in anything in your ladle. So you basically took a ladle full of stuff that you're not interested in, and you dumped it all out. So it's hard to apply. We're gonna talk about the logic later. It's sort of like if you're stuck, it's a good solution, but it's probably not an ideal solution because where you draw the line and how much is a significant amount of soup and how much is an insignificant amount of soup, it's a complicated one. But I did want to mention it as a theoretical possibility. Okay. Next scenario, and actually mostly scenarios, each one holds a unique halakhic nuance, so we're really not doing the same thing again and again. Okay, we're all, B'ez Hashem, awaiting the time we can all be back in shul for a kiddush, and a person's at kiddush and they only want red jelly beans. Okay, that's a topic close to people's hearts. They only want red jelly beans. Now, I just want to clarify, I didn't have a chance to ask the questioner. I don't think this is a political statement. I just want to make sure everyone understands that this is not red versus blue jelly beans. They only want red jelly beans, but the bowl of jelly beans on the table has all kinds. So are they allowed to fish out the red jelly beans, or do they just have to take the mixture however it comes? So at worst, we know already the answer. If I'm taking it at the kiddush right now, when I want to take it, it's for use right now, taking the jelly beans, I'm going to eat them right after I take them. I'm not using a specialized utensil. I'll take the red jelly beans from the other jelly beans. That's okay. The question is, do you even have to get that complicated? So borer is when you're separating desired and not desired. But in order for it to be an issue of borer, there has to be a qualitative difference between the things that I'm selecting. So peas and carrots, I don't mean to, I only keep this job because I try to not be political. So I'm not going to get political about which is better, peas or carrots, but no one's going to argue that they're different. Peas and carrots are definitely different. The question is a red jelly bean fundamentally different than a pink jelly bean? Now, I don't know, to be honest with you. I don't know if the jelly beans taste differently or not. If the jelly beans actually taste different, then it would be a real boner question. I don't think they do. It looks like the most of the reactions I'm getting is that they really don't taste that different. If they don't taste different, so it's just the person happens to like red, that's not considered a substantive enough difference for the issue of borer to even come up. But that's an interesting issue. If I could just go off topic for one moment, I saw, just when I was preparing for today, I saw a really good example that probably resonates more for people. Let's say I want to put out a platter of cake, all the same kind of cake. And let's say some of the pieces are nice, healthy sized pieces, maybe not healthy for the eater, but healthy for the piece, healthy sized pieces. And some of the pieces are not so well cut, or this, like I'm taking it out of the freezer or something. So it's not really qualitative. It's just an aesthetic thing. So that you don't have to worry about borer in that case. You don't have to keep all the rules about immediate and good from bad, because it's not substantive. But if it's something that's really different or really different in fundamental quality, that's where borer kicks in. So I think different colored jelly beans is not an issue, but it's a great question because it really highlights an important issue. Okay, next question. Okay, a person has a box of matzah. Don't worry, it's not a Pesach question. No one should get nervous. A person has a box of matzah, and just regular Manischewitz matzahs, whatever. And there are some matzahs that are broken and some matzahs that are whole. Okay, and they want to use matzahs for lechem mishnah, right? You need a whole matzah to make hamotzi. So how does that work? Now, let's go through it. In this example, would it be borer to separate whole matzahs from broken matzahs? You better believe it would be borer. Even before, when we gave the example of the cake, okay, big piece, small piece, who cares? A matzah, most of us only have matzahs to be able to use for lechem mishnah. If the matzah is whole versus the matzah being broken, that's a world of difference in terms of the usability of the matzah. That is a borer question. So if I see, the third matzah is a whole matzah, then as long as I'm going to use it now, I'm going to use it for hamotzi now. It doesn't have to be that I'm going to eat it now, but we're about to go wash. We're about to make kiddush. It's like now. It's not 9 o'clock in the morning. It's everyone's home and we're about to make kiddush. If I see that the third matzah is a whole matzah, I can just reach in and pull it out, and that will be fine because it's for immediate use, and I'm taking the desired from the not desired. But the questioner wisely is pointing out, I can't see what the story is with the matzahs. What happens? I don't know. You just reach in and you see what you find, right? You don't know until you pick it up. So the questioner wants to know, can I just reach in, pick up a random matzah, and if it's whole, great. And if not, I'll go on to the next one. So that actually would be fine, because the person's intent in pulling out the matzah is not to separate things for long-term organization. The person's intent is to find one whole matzah. It happens to be the first matzah they pulled out wasn't the whole matzah. So they move on. But that's okay. As long as it's for right now, you're about to make kiddush, that would be okay. That was a really good question. Okay. Next. Is there a way to sort through a stack of papers to find the one I would like to read? Now, this is a really good question. This is a really good question because there's something inherent in the question that we do need to recognize. Borer is not limited to food. Most of the examples of borer are food-oriented, but it's not limited to food. Borer could be any item. So a person has a stack of papers. A stack of papers is definitely mishmashed. You don't know, certainly not from a few feet away, you don't know which paper is which. And they need one specific paper. So to start trying to find the paper, that could be a borer issue. Is there any way that it could be okay? Sure. The way it could be okay is if I'm trying to find the paper to use now. In other words, there's, I have a printout of, I keep printouts of Divrei Torah in every parsha, and I want to, I'm sitting in my house on Shabbos, and I want to find the printout for Parshas B'Shalach, and it's all mishmashed. But once I find the paper, I'm going to sit down and read it. So it's for now. So I'll reach in and I'll hopefully find the paper that I'm looking for, and then I'll sit down and use it. That's taken the desirable from the not desired, and it's for immediate use. You could also do what we explained with the matzah example. In other words, if I really don't know where my Parshas B'Shalach Dvar Torah is, I could just randomly pick up papers and look, is this B'Shalach or not? If it's not B'Shalach, I'll go for the next one. Obviously, if I'm doing that, then the moment I find the paper that I'm looking for, I have to stop. In other words, because the whole purpose of this exercise is to find one piece of paper for use right now. And the same thing would have been true with the matzahs, by the way. Okay. Okay, this is There are certain benefits to Zoom. So one of the benefits is that no matter how much people might not like my answer to this question, what are you going to do to me? You can't, if you throw something at this moment, it's your own computer. It's not, So the following question: Can I take cutlery out of the dishwasher drying rack and pull out several forks at the same time to put away in the fork section of the drawer? Okay, so let's just give the scenario. It's a very, very common scenario. A person is setting the table for Shabbos morning, and they didn't have time to unload their dishwasher before Shabbos. There's too many things going on. So in the dishwasher is, Baruch Hashem, a clean, ready to use total mishmash of cutlery. Okay, let's give two scenarios, and you want to set the table for Shabbos lunch. Scenario number one, it's 11:30 Shabbos morning. You just got home from shul. You're ready to set the table, and once you set the table, you're going to wash, and you're going to make kiddush and wash, etc. So that's called immediate use, right? I mean, it's for now. It's called immediate use. So in that case, it is more lenient because it's for immediate use. But even though it's for immediate use, it only means that I can take out what I'm looking for. So I need to set the table for 4. So I need 4 forks, 4 knives, 4 spoons. So sometimes you can look and you can kind of see where the fork is jutting out. So you reach in and take 1 fork, 2 forks, 3 forks, etc. Sometimes you can't see. You just kind of randomly pick something up and hope it's one of the things you need. So the fact that it's for right now, you can do one of the 2 things. You can either specifically find the fork, knife, spoon, and pull each of them out as you need it, or you can just randomly reach for things. But again, once you've got what you need, you have to stop. This is all true when it's for immediate use. What you cannot do, even if it's for immediate use, what you may not do is you may not just take a fistful of cutlery and start sorting it all out. Because, I mean, you could sort it out until you found what you needed. In other words, you could take the fistful at, okay, this, fork, I need a second fork, I need a third fork, etc. But you're not allowed to sort out all of your cutlery, or for that matter, if you don't need a spoon for Shabbos lunch, if you only need a fork and a knife, you can't start sorting out the spoons at that point. Quick, and I don't want to take comments now, but just like quick nod or shake. Are people with me? Am I making sense, or is this okay? Great. Okay, thank you. Now let's go to another scenario. It's 9 o'clock in the morning on Shabbos. You're not going to eat for another 3 hours. If it's a short drusher, you're not going to. Well, maybe if it's a short drusher, but you're not going to eat for a while. So you can't do any type of borer then. Can't do any. You couldn't even do the thing of picking them out one by one, because the whole rationale of picking out one by one is it's an attempt to find your whole matzah that you're going to use now. You're not going to do any of it now anyway, so you're taking things out of a mishmash. That's a borer problem. So what is the solution for your mishmash cutlery at 9 o'clock Shabbos morning? So this is a very famous solution. So what borer is a problem when you have a mishmash thing and then you de-mishmash it in an organized manner. If you make it that it's no longer a mishmash, it's not borer anymore. So what you do is reach into your dishwasher. You reach into your dishwasher. You take a lot of forks, knives, spoons, whatever. Don't be discerning in what you're taking. Just grab whatever's there and go to your dining room table and cast it out very wide, like kind of pass everything out wide and just kind of spread it all out. At that point, when you spread it all out, it's no longer a borer situation. And even though you did something to make it not mishmash, there was zero organization in your making it not mishmash. You just spread it all out. So that once that situation, you could do that at 9 o'clock in the morning and then find your fork and find your knife and find your spoon, no problem. But again, that's necessary when it's not for immediate use. Okay. Okay. Two things that are very common issues. chicken skin and fat, and then fat on meat. So let's go step by step. So chicken skin. So let's just sort of line up the question here. If a person likes chicken skin or eats the chicken skin, it's obviously not a borer issue. In other words, they're eating all of it. That's not borer. It's not a problem. The chicken skin is attached to the chicken. So what would we say? So the person wants to eat the chicken, but doesn't want to eat the skin. So what do you normally say? You say, well, no problem. If it's for immediate use, just take the good from the bad. How does that work here? The bad is blocking the good. You don't want the chicken skin. How are you supposed to get to the chicken? The only way to get to the chicken is by removing the skin. So how does that work? So there is an interesting exception in borer. It should be that it's for immediate use because it's the same logic. In a situation when something is literally blocking you, when the not desired thing is blocking you from accessing desired thing, in such a situation, we say that the normal way to eat it is to move away the not desired thing. That's okay, because the same way that we created all these allowances for borer to take the desired from the not desired for immediate use, all of that is good because, gosh, how's a person supposed to eat? If the whole makeup of the item is that the not desired is blocking you from the desired, how's the person supposed to eat? So actually, if you're going to eat the chicken now, you're allowed to move the skin away. You're allowed to push the skin off to the side. You're allowed to, that would be fine. Now, it wouldn't be appropriate to pull the skin off the chicken at 9 o'clock in the morning in your kitchen, because that's not for immediate use. But that would be okay. By the way, an easier example to understand perhaps than the chicken skin is, how do you peel an orange on Shabbos? Right? You want to eat an orange. Are you going to eat the peel? I don't think so. So the desired thing is the fruit, the not desired thing is the peel. So we say, no problem. Take the good from the bad. How am I supposed to take the good from the bad? What am I supposed to do? So again, that's the only way you can access the orange is if you remove the peel. So that's why you're allowed to eat an orange on Shabbos. There too. It should be that you're peeling the orange right before you're going to eat it, or right before you're going to serve it. So that's the story with the chicken skin. In terms of removing fat from meat, so the ideal model would be that I eat the meat and then I eat and then I just stop once I get to the fat. That would really be like taking the good from the bad, that you eat the meat and then you just stop once you get to the fat. That's complicated. What would be an option, and this is something we mentioned in an earlier context, but it's much more common here. What would be an option is to cut away some of the meat along with the fat. In other words, so the problem of borer is when I separate the meat and the fat from each other. But in this case, I'm keeping some of the meat with the fat. Again, by a quick nod or shake. Did people follow that one? Okay, great, thank you. So I'm keeping some of the meat with the fat. So that's a commonly done thing for meat with fat. That should be done right before one eats it, though. Either right before one serves it, or right before you eat it. You shouldn't be doing it at 9 o'clock in the morning. But the point is, you would cut some of the meat away with it. It should not be an infinitesimal amount of meat, because if it's an infinitesimal amount of meat, you really are separating the meat from the fat. But the point is, it's just a certain amount of, some substantive amount of the meat, that would be okay to separate that along with the fat. Now, the questioner specifically asked, what about Yom Tov as well? So on Yom Tov, this is a good time to mention it. On Yom Tov, we're more lenient about borer. Borer is not okay across the board on Yom Tov, but basically for the type of things that you couldn't really do easily before Yom Tov, and that they're a small scale, borer is okay on Yom Tov. So So if I'm eating meat on Yom Tiv, I don't have to sit there and let me cut a little bit of the meat along with the fat. I can trim the fat off in a very precise way on Yom Tiv. So this is one of the examples of the halachas of Yom Tiv being different than the halachas of Shabbos. Okay. Okay. Another question. If a person discovers a pin feather, is it okay to remove a piece of chicken skin with it just before bringing it to the table, or just serve another piece? It's an interesting question. So let's just clarify this. You're in the kitchen, you're about to serve the main course, and you realize there's a feather coming out here. Now, to just pluck the feather out, that is definitely borer. That's borer, that's a problem. And by the way, to just pluck the feather out is a problem, even if you're about to eat at that moment. So what the questioner wants to know, would it be all right to cut away a little bit of the skin, assuming the skin is desirable, by the way. That's the assumption being made in this context, which also leads me to a good point. Desirable versus non-desirable is extremely subjective. We all know that. Whatever is motivating my actions, that's the defining factor for what's desirable or what's not desirable. So assuming for a moment that whether it be that I'm going to eat it, whether it be that someone else is going to eat it, but the assumption being made is that the chicken skin is desirable in this case, but the feather is not desirable. So what would make the most sense is to cut away. It's actually very similar to the meat fat example. It will make the most sense to cut away a little bit of the skin along with the feather. Okay, now here's the interesting question. When should one do that? So this is one of these situations. Again, I think it makes sense to cut the skin along with the feather for immediate use, not at 9 o'clock in the morning. But this is a question, and I think it's fair to say what I'm saying, which is I think it really depends on the circumstances. There's two types of dynamics when you're serving food at a meal, right? Maybe one of the few upsides of COVID is we have much less stress in impressing guests, right? In other words, you could imagine a situation, it's embarrassing. You have a guest sitting at your table. You want them to think you have want to think you're on top of things in your home. And there's this feather sticking out of a piece of chicken, right? It's embarrassing. So I think it's fair to say that immediate use in that context is right before you bring it out to the table, right before you serve it. If, on the other hand, you're just among your family, or maybe somebody you're hoping doesn't ask you for another invitation anyway, so you're not trying to impress them, and you really couldn't care less if they see the feather coming out of you don't care, but the only reason to take the feather out is because whoever's going to eat it, it's going to be not pleasant to eat something with a feather. So they're probably, once the person has it on their plate and decides they're going to eat it, it's probably the time to pick off a little bit of the skin. So there's some interesting things that fit into this question. Okay, this is actually the last question I have, but it's a whole different topic. Miriam correctly urges me to come up with questions for the advertising for the topic. So I put out a question having to do with cleaning up a board game. So evidently the question that I put, is it really true that borer applies to cleaning up a board game? So the question that the questioner asked is it borer while playing a game or we're setting up a game where you're looking or picking out pieces to play with? So now let's think about this. And this is the last question that I have here. And I think it's actually a nice way to pull together a lot of what we discussed this evening. Statement number one, borer is not limited to food. We know that, right? So you think about the pieces of a game. What might be the easiest thing to think about is good old Monopoly, okay? So there's denominations of bills all over the place. You open up the game, you can't remember who didn't clean up last time, but you open up the game and the bills are totally mishmashed. So what's the first thing you do normally when you set up a Monopoly game? The first thing you do is you organize out all the bills, right? So I would think that's Borer. I would think that's Borer. I'm not going to belabor the example with all different cards, but there's a lot of this kind of stuff with card games and things like that. I would think that's Borer. So now, let's ask the question. So is there any way you can play Monopoly? There's all this other question about Monopoly, money, Shabbos, whatever. That's a whole separate discussion. But many opinions hold it's fine to play Monopoly on Shabbos. Let's say you can play Monopoly on Shabbos. Is there a way to play Monopoly on Shabbos when the bills are all discombobulated? So that what would be the answer? The answer would be as you need them, right? In other words, you start off the game of Monopoly, I don't know, $500, something like that, whatever it is. So at the beginning, we need $500. So we need to find 500s for each person. So, okay, so that's for immediate use right now. Go through all the mishmash and find 500s for each person and give them out. And that's no different than going through your dishwasher to find forks to set the table, as long as it's for right now. So the questioner is making a very valid point that as long as you're collecting the things as needed, it's not a problem with Borer, as long as you're taking what you need. What would be a problem with Borer is either if you set it all up, we need to have everything just so, right from the beginning, that would be a problem with Borer, presumably. Thank you, Menashe. That would be a problem with Borer. That's one possibility. The other thing that would really be a problem with Borer is what happens at the end of a game. Things are all over the place, right? There's pieces, there's cards, there's dollars, all over the place. So the normal thing to do at that time is to organize it. But that's really Borer because you're organizing it all out. So that, to the best of my knowledge, would be problematic. But it's an interesting example to close with because it kind of pulls together a lot of what we discussed tonight. Okay, thank you again for these wonderful questions. There were a number of chats that came in. I'm going to try to read each question and then answer it, and then certainly happy to take comments once we're done. If people have a comment about my answer to a given chat, feel free to call it out or chat me or okay. Menashe Baruch Hashem is filling his quota of puns. Taking peas from carrots to eat the peas will appease the rabbi. Thank you, Menashe. Okay, now Leah Covell asked a very important question. We said that Borer is okay if you satisfy 3 conditions. It has to be for immediate use. It has to be the desired from the not desired, and you can't use a specialized instrument. So Leah's question is, so the jelly bean example, if we decided that was going to be a Borer problem, the person's using a spoon, is that called a specialized instrument? That's a great question. So the bottom line is a spoon is just considered an extension of my hand. A spoon is just a more pleasant way for me to take something. What we mean by a specialized instrument, a slotted spoon would be a specialized instrument. Imagine if I have a salad that I'm serving, there's a salad component and there's like a juice from the salad. So I want to serve it with a slotted spoon. So the person wants the cucumbers. They don't want all that liquid in the cucumber salad. And they're taking it now. So they're taking the cucumbers now, but there's one problem. If they're using a slotted spoon, that's a specialized vessel to separate. And that's a problem, even if it's for now, even if it's the good from the bad. But a regular spoon is not made to differentiate, so it's not a problem. By the way, a slotted spoon would be okay on Yom Tov, just not on Shabbos. Okay. Thank you, Janet, for clarifying that the black licorice jelly beans are a whole different ballgame. Thank you to Janet Deneroff for that. That's a good point. Okay, we have a difference of opinion about if jelly beans, if different colors taste different or not. I am going to tell people to consult with their local. I look like I should know, but I really don't know. So that's above my pay grade. Okay, wonderful question. Forgive me. I don't know who Ab. Oh, that's is that Yaakov? What about picking a particular blouse to wear? Is that you? Somebody asked. I'm sorry. I don't know who Abba's iPad is. Whoever Abba is. What about picking a particular blouse to wear? That's a very good question. So here's the situation. Question number one: is it you go into your closet and you have different clothes hanging from your closet? Is that borer or not? So the litmus test would be if from, let's say, a few feet away, if you'd be able to clearly see one from the other, clearly discern one from the other. If that's the case, it's not borer to begin with. But if from a few feet away, it's hard to know what's what, which is, I think, the case for many of us, then it could be a borer issue. So let's say it's a borer issue. So how is one to pick out clothing in the morning? Same issue that we're bringing up. If I'm going into my closet to get my shirt, because I'm going to put on my shirt in a moment. So I'm doing it now for use now, and I'm taking the desired item. That would be okay. But if I want to set clothes out, for my children the night before Friday night for them to wear Shabbos morning, if it's all mishmash, that actually would be a borer problem. Okay, so that's an interesting, thank you for raising that. Oh, Ariel, I'm going to read your question. I'm going to reword it. And if I misunderstood it, let me know. I think you mean that the way the silverware is set up in the dishwasher is each type of silverware is in a different slot of the dishwasher. Am I understanding you correctly, Ariel? Okay, if you don't say, I'm going to assume I am. Yes?
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Ariel. So if your dishwasher was organized, that you had forks here and spoons there and knives there, as long as there's not a significant distinction between the forks themselves, the spoons themselves, it wouldn't be a borer problem. Now, if you're looking for matching forks and knives and spoons from the matching set, and you have various configurations in your dishwasher, but you want 4 forks from your nice Shabbos set, even if the forks are separate, if you're separating between this set of forks versus that set of forks, it still is going to be a problem. But assuming for a moment that whatever fork is good, whatever knife is good, whatever spoon is good, if they were already separate, then you're right. That would solve the borer issue. Thank you. Yeah, that's a really good question. Someone asked, how early may one set the Shabbos lunch table? In other words, obviously one can set the Shabbos lunch table as early as they want. The questioner means, how early may one set it that it's not an issue of borer? So I would say that you have to, again, figure out what your goals are to have the Shabbos table set. Most of us, I think, if we're having guests over for Shabbos lunch, I think we'd be uncomfortable setting the table in front of them. It happens many times, by the way, but I think we'd rather have the table set before they come to the home. And my guess is that's how most of us feel. So if that's the case, then it's called immediate use, estimating what time the guests will be at your home. At that point, is called immediate use. So if it takes me 15 minutes to set the Shabbos table, and it's possible that they'll be coming to the house by 11:30, and I don't have to be down to the second. If I want to set the table at 11 o'clock and give myself, just to be safe, 15 minutes, whatever, I think that's called immediate use. So if I'm figuring out what time is good to do it within reason, within reasonable buffers, to have it done at the time that I want to have it done. If, on the other hand, I like to go to Shul Shabbos morning, And I don't want to have to run home before the guests get there. And I want the table to be set. So what I'm going to do is right before I leave for Shul Shabbos morning, I'm going to set the table. It's fine to set the table, but I think borer would be problematic if that's when I'm setting the table. I hope I answered the question. It's an important question. Really interesting question. May one eat chicken soup with a fork? What's the advertisement? The soup you can eat with a fork? Wasn't there some company that prided itself on that? Something like that. May one eat chicken soup with a fork? So that's a really, really interesting question. I think the question would be, what's the goal of eating the chicken soup with a fork? If the goal is because I don't want to have to deal with any of the liquid, I just want to eat the food within the chicken soup, and I actually am hoping to eliminate the liquid through using the fork, I think that'll be a problem with borer. I think that's a great question. If, on the other hand, I'm also not interested in the soup, but I'm not using the fork as a means of separating. I'm just going to poke and, take out what I want and leave the liquid behind. Then I think the fork is just an extension of my hands. But if I want to kind of come out from underneath the thing and kind of fork it in a way that the liquid comes down, then I think I'm using it. It's not that different than a slotted spoon. I hope that was I hope that was a clear enough answer. If not, please let me know. Thank you. There is a member of the Scheinson clan recommends that we should ask the children the reason for their preference. That's in terms of jelly beans, excuse me. Great question. Thank you. So the Trumpkas asked the following scenario. So 9 o'clock Shabbos morning, I want to set my table. And the stuff in my dishwasher is mishmashed. So what I want to do is I want to spread it all out far and wide. I want to spread it all out far and wide. And we said by spreading it out far and wide, it no longer is a mishmash. So fine. So I have service for 8 sitting along my dining room table right now, okay? And I wanted to set 4 settings. So now I have random forks, knives, spoons lying all over my dining room table. So suffice it to say, my goal is to get them off the table before I eat lunch. Fine. But the question is, now that it's spread out, can I organize them now? But I hope people followed that question. It's a good question. So actually, I would say you could, because what you've accomplished by spreading them out is you've made it that it's no longer a mishmash. So there's a fork on that end, and it's not mishmash, but I think it's lying there alone. And there's a fork on this end, it's lying there alone. So let me put the 2 forks together and put them in the fork section of my drawer. That's what I would say. It's an interesting question. Thank you for raising that. Okay, I'm going to read the question. I'm not sure I understand it. Serving different toppings on the cake by cutting the cake. For example, strawberries on strawberry shortcake. Is this borer? I'm not, if the questioner wants to either jump in or send me another text, I'm not sure I understand the question, unless someone else wants to try to explain.
And when you're trying to cut it, the cake,
yes,
some people want ones with strawberries. Some people want slices without strawberries.
Oh, so what you're saying is finding the spot of the cake that doesn't have strawberries? Is that what you mean? Or do you mean pushing the strawberries off the cake?
No, not pushing them off, just finding the ones with the
not
strawberries.
borer. That's a good question. The question is, if people ask me, give me the flour, give me the piece of cake with strawberries on it, give me this, don't give me the one with all that frosting. It's a big cake and you can see what's what. So to select whichever piece they want, I wouldn't say it's a borer problem. That's a good question. Thank you for raising that. That's an interesting question. Okay. Thank you to Nancy and Bruce. So person actually had time to put their cutlery back in their drawer and everything's where it's supposed to be before Shabbos. But as you know, actually a lot of us do this if we think about it. We sort of create a little bit of a mishmash in our own hands when we take the cutlery from the drawer to bring it to the table. So the bottom line is, if it makes sense, and if you have it organized in your own way, like Nancy wrote, she has the spoon, or someone from the Jamesons wrote, the spoons between two fingers, the forks between two more fingers. As long as in your way it's organized, it would not be a border problem. Thank you for raising that. Okay, Ariel, your question is a fair one. It's a little bit off of border. If I have time, I'll come back to it. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you, Yaakov. Thank you very much. Grocery bag is filled with baby foods. Can I sort through the baby foods in the bag on Shabbos to find the flavor I am looking for? It's interesting. So you have to look closely at the label to find the actual, you know, do you want the bananas? Do you want the this? Do you want the that? So I would argue to you, if you can't just figure it out with a glance, which I can understand why you couldn't figure it out with a glance, I would argue to you it's a border issue. Now, as long as you're going to use the baby food now, it's fine. In other words, your baby wants the food now, so fine. So let me find the bananas. That's what they want now. So I'll go with that. Then you can pick out the bananas. But I think you're right. I think if you're just like organizing it for later, when it's all mishmashed in your bag, it probably is a border problem if you're doing it now for later. But if you're doing it for now, it's fine, as long as you're actively getting what you're looking for. Thank you, Sigla. If everything is neatly stacked, setting the table before going to shul, a person is taking neatly stacked dishes out of the cupboard and neatly piled utensils out of the drawer. Is there a problem of setting the table hours before with these individual piles? Completely fine. Completely fine. Our only issue about setting the table hours before is if you have to be doing borer and separating within mixtures and the like. Thank you for raising that. Also, Yaakov, a good question. If in a drawer it's not, you don't have those insert things that organizes it all out, and it's just a mishmash in your drawer, there would be a borer issue. I mean, most of us, if we had a drawer like that, it would all be mishmashed within the drawer. That's what I'm visualizing as I'm reading your question. So it would be a borer issue. Again, it's not the end of the world. All it means is that you shouldn't be selecting utensils out of the mishmash of your drawer until it's time for you to use them. Okay, thank you. Good question, Yael. What about picking a book from the bookshelf? Does that follow your blouse example? From a distance, I may not be able to read the titles on the spine, but close up I can see them like the blouses. Yeah, in other words, books on a bookshelf could definitely be a border problem. Again, as long as it's the book that I want to read now, it's fine. But if I'm taking this sort of quiet Shabbos opportunity to organize my bookshelf, if it's not so clear from a distance what's what, it would be a problem of border. Okay, I think I missed one. Yeah, Menashe, your point is well taken, but I think I'll hold off on that one. Any other comments? Whether, oh, Leah. Leah wrote, but you can't put the books back in their place, right? I'm not, maybe Leah, you want to explain to me what you mean? I'm not sure where on the line you're coming on that one.
Well, I just think that if you take the book off the shelf and there's a special place that the book sits normally, and then you're finished with it, I had this sort of this Shabbostic feeling that you couldn't then put the book back exactly in its place. You had to sort of leave it out till after Shabbos and then put it back. Is that completely
I would say
wrong?
it's okay. I would say in other words, you're essentially creating a new mishmash. The problem is sorting it out, but to put it in its set place, I think is fine. I think so.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any other Borer questions? Any other borer questions? People should feel free to go off if they want. Ariel, you had a question I want to go back to now. Ariel had a question about olive pits. It's relevant for a lot of different types of things. There's a lot of foods. It could be olive pits. It could be pistachio shells. You know, things like that that are not that there's a segment of the food that are not edible. What are you supposed to do with it? You have a collection there of pits now, or you have a collection of nutshells, or how does it work? So in terms of muksa, Ariel's not really talking about borer. It's really a muksa question, and maybe at some point we'll visit muksa as a topic. I think that's on Miriam's list, but on a basic level, Ariel, in terms of your muksa question, the bottom line is if it's an eyesore to have such a pile of olive pits sitting in the middle of your table, you're allowed to move the things away as an eyesore. The other option is just make sure they all end up on a plate, so the plate's not muksa. So you'll take the plate to the garbage can afterwards. That's probably makes the most sense. Either one of those. Thank you, Ariel. Someone else sent something in. Okay, the question is, if there, sorry, I lost the, if there is a game with pieces that all go in their own distinct sections in the box, is it permitted to put them away after playing the game? So if they're mixed, if they're all mixed up, it would be problematic to put them all in their separate spots. If the things are relatively separate and that from a distance you can see, oh yeah, that's that piece, that's that piece, that's that piece, then it's fine to put them in their organized places. I hope I answered the question. Okay, I want to just ask people, thank you everybody for joining us, and particularly those who submitted questions. It really gives body to the discussion. And allows me to not share with you my own food preferences, which is, would be terrible if I had to share that with you. God willing, we'd like to have another one of these next month. We were wondering if it would make sense to have a pre-Purim one. There's a lot of unique things about Purim this year. There's a lot of COVID considerations because of Purim. Now, Mir Tashem, I'm going to be sending out hopefully some pretty clear guidance from the shul about a lot of the COVID-related issues. But between COVID things and Purim's, different between Purim's on a Friday this year, there's some differences in terms of that. My guess is that most of the questions will be answered in some way or another by whatever I send out, by the side brief before we meet. But it might still be helpful to be able to ask you a specific question, hear other questions that kind of get you thinking. Would that be of interest to people for the next one to be focused on Purim vis-a-vis COVID and vis-a-vis Purim on Friday? Does that sound reasonable? Okay, I'm getting good feedback. Okay, so I hope that's good. Okay, so Amir Tashem, thanks to Miriam, we already have a date for this. The next one will be Tuesday, February 23rd. It's the Tuesday before Purim. Purim's on a Thursday night. We'll meet Tuesday, February 23rd at 8 p.m. Does that sound okay to people? Is that too close? I mean, I think, again, there'll be a basic guidance that will come out, but this is like specific questions. Does that sound reasonable to people? Okay. Okay, everyone should have a wonderful night. Thank you so much for joining us. Okay, take care.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.